Now we'll see the stability of emulsions. So an emulsion is said to be stable if it remains as such after its preparation. That is, the dispersed phase globules are uniformly distributed throughout the dispersion medium during its storage. So there are three main problems which affect the stability of emulsion. First is cracking, the next is creaming, and the third one is phase inversion. Cracking means the separation of two layers of dispersed phase and the continuous phase due to coalescence of dispersed phase globules, which are difficult to redisperse even after shaking. That is, the two phases. We know that emulsion has two phases, the aqueous phase and the oil phase. So cracking means the separation of these two layers. So how it happens? Due to the coalescence of the dispersed phase globules. Once the cracking occurs, you cannot redisperse even after the shaking. There are many reasons for the cracking. First one is the addition of emulsifying agent of opposite type. Next is the decomposition or precipitation of emulsifying agent, addition of common solvent, microorganisms, change in temperature, and by creaming. So we'll see one by one. First is the addition of emulsifying agent of opposite type. We have already seen that certain emulsifying agent promote oil in water type of emulsion and certain emulsifying agents promote water in oil type of emulsion. For example, soaps of monovalent metals produce oil in water type of emulsion, while soaps of divalent metals produce water in oil type of emulsion. But if you add monovalent soap to a divalent soap emulsion or a divalent soap to monovalent soap emulsion, this will lead to cracking of the emulsion. Next is the decomposition or precipitation of emulsifying agent. That is, emulsifying agent is a major ingredient in the emulsion which helps in the formation of emulsion. So if the emulsifying agent is decomposed or precipitated, this will lead to cracking of the emulsion. For example, when an acid is added to an alkali soap emulsion such as a turpentine liniment, it can cause the decomposition of emulsifying agent, which in turn leads to the cracking of emulsion. Similarly, for the example for the precipitation, when sodium chloride is added to sodium or potassium soap emulsion, it may lead to precipitation of emulsifying agent and it will lead to the cracking of emulsion. The next reason for cracking is the addition of common solvent. So common solvent means that solvent which can dissolve or it can mix with the aqueous phase, oil phase and the emulsifying agent. So that will lead to the formation of a true solution. For example, if you add alcohol to turpentine liniment, so the alcohol can solubilize the turpentine oil, soft to soap and is miscible with water. So this will lead to the formation of a true solution which in turn leads to the destruction of the emulsion. Next is by microorganisms. That is, if the emulsions are not stored properly. Similarly, most of the emulsifying agents which we are using are of natural origin. So there are more chances for the growth of microorganisms. So this will destroy the emulsion. So you need to preserve the emulsion properly by adding the preservatives, antioxidants, etc. Next reason for cracking is change in temperature. When the emulsion is stored at high temperature, what will happen is that the viscosity of the continuous phase is decreased. So this will lead to cracking of the emulsion. Similarly, if the emulsion is frozen, what will happen is that the aqueous phase get converted into ice. This ice will exert pressure on the globules, oil globules. So this will lead to the cracking of emulsion. So what we have to do, we should not store at a higher temperature and we should not freeze the emulsion. Better if it is stored at a temperature not exceeding 25 degree centigrade. Next is by creaming. So creaming can lead to cracking. So these are the reasons of cracking. Next we will see what is creaming, what are the reasons for creaming and how you can reduce creaming in the emulsion. Creaming is defined as the upward movement of dispersed phase globules to form a thick layer at the surface of the emulsion, which can be redistributed or redispersed by shaking. Since it can be redispersed by shaking, we call it a temporary phenomenon. But as far as possible, the creaming should be avoided because, as we said earlier, it may lead to cracking of the emulsion. So the factors which affect creaming can be explained on the basis of Stokes' law. Rate of creaming is equal to 2r square d1 minus d2 into g divided by 9 eta, where v is the rate of creaming, r is the radius of the dispersed phase globules, d1 density of the dispersed phase, d2 is the density of the dispersion medium, g is the gravitational constant, and eta is the viscosity of the dispersion medium. So the first factor is the radius of the dispersed phase globules. We can see here the rate of creaming is directly proportional to the radius. That means if the radius is reduced, the rate of creaming can be reduced. So what we need to do, you need to reduce the radius of dispersed phase globules. As much the radius is decreased, that much the stable the emulsion is. So for that, the emulsion has to be passed through homogenizers so that we'll get the minute globules. Second factor is the density difference between the dispersed phase and continuous phase. If that density difference is higher, the rate of creaming is higher. That means the density difference can be, if it is reduced, the rate of creaming also can be reduced. This factor is not that applied. And similarly, viscosity. Viscosity of the dispersion medium or continuous medium or continuous phase. It is inversely proportional. So that means if the viscosity is enhanced, the rate of creaming can be reduced. So in order to enhance the viscosity, you can include the thickening agents such as the methyl cellulose, tragacanth, etc. And the rate of creaming can be reduced by storing at a temperature not exceeding 25 degree centigrade. We have already seen that when it is stored at higher temperature, it will reduce the viscosity of the continuous phase. Similarly, if it is frozen, that also will affect the stability of emulsion. So it has to be stored at a temperature not exceeding 25 degree centigrade. Next is the phase inversion. Phase inversion means the change of one type of emulsion into the other type. That means if it is oil in water type of emulsion, it changes to water in oil type. and the vice versa also may happen. So there are different reasons. One is the addition of electrolytes. Second is by changing the phase volume ratio. So the phase inversion can be minimized by keeping the concentration of dispersed phase between 30 to 60%. Similarly, temperature change can also cause the phase inversion. So as we have already said, it has to be stored at a temperature not exceeding 25 degree centigrade. The fourth reason is by changing the emulsifying agent. That is, the emulsion type is determined by the solubility of the emulsifying agent. So if it is more soluble in water, we'll get oil in water type of emulsion, and if it is more soluble in oil, we'll get water in oil type of emulsion. So if you add a substance that alters the solubility of emulsifying agent, that can lead to phase inversion. For example, if you add calcium chloride to oil in water type of emulsion, which is stabilized by sodium soap, in such a case, phase inversion occurs. That is, the oil in water type of emulsion get converted into water in oil type of emulsion. Now this water in oil type of emulsion will be stabilized by the calcium soap. So these are the reasons for phase inversion. So what you have to do to avoid the phase inversion? You should not add any ingredient which will cause the inversion of phases. And it's better to keep the dispersed phase between 30 to 60%. Should be stored at a temperature not exceeding 25 degrees centigrade, and you should not add any ingredient which will change the solubility of the emulsifying agent. So these are the different stability problems affecting the emulsions.